a lot of the people, in fact, I would say probably the vast majority, maybe even 100% of the Republicans who are pushing these anti-drag laws, characterize themselves as Christians. Oh, yes, we're Christians. We follow Jesus. We do what Christ, we would do what Christ would do, right? Right. So in Ohio, Chris Avell is the pastor of an evangelical church. It's called Dad's Place. It's in Bryan, Ohio. And it's just down the street from a shelter, from a homeless shelter. And, we had this polar vortex last week where the global warming has weakened the jet stream to the point that the jet stream can no longer keep Arctic air in the Arctic. And so it drools down over North America. And we get, in places that, would normally get snow, it'd normally be 15, 20 degrees, 25 degrees. It's like 30 below, 20 below. I mean, just massively cold, genuinely Arctic cold weather. And people were dying. I mean, in fact, 3 people died in this community from hypothermia, or at least they're investigating 3 deaths, believing that they were caused by hypothermia. So Pastor Chris Avell says, I'm going to open my church. Because the homeless refuge down the street, the homeless place, whatever you call it, was full. I mean, there was no room in the inn. Bringing another parallel to the Jesus story, I suppose. And so he opens the place. And so what do the city fathers do? And I guarantee you, they all call themselves Christians. These are little Republican towns, right? What did the city fathers do? They said, we're going to throw you in jail, Pastor Avell, for letting people sleep on the floor or letting people sleep on the main floor of your church when the zoning ordinances say that anything that is zoned commercial you cannot use the ground floor for sleeping. It's become a national story. I don't know if they've backed down yet. The Mississippi Free Press, Ashton Pittman, said that this was a rare example in the U.S. of actual religious persecution of a Christian by the state. Actually, I think he's right. It's incredible. Avell was charged days before Milwaukee officials began investigating at least 3 homeless people's possible deaths from hypothermia. And then they note the nation's homeless population grew sharply by 12% last year, with nearly 654,000 people without housing. Now, what is causing this? Zillow did an amazing, groundbreaking study about a year and a half ago, which I wrote about in 2 of my, I've written about it twice in Hartmann Report. If you just go to a search engine and just search hartmannreport.com for the word homelessness, it'll pop right up. And what they found in this study was that when the average cost of rent in a community, which typically reflects the average monthly mortgage payment, more or less. So when the average cost of rent in a community exceeds roughly a third of the average income in a community, and that was always the rule of thumb, that you never want to spend more than a third of your income on your housing. I remember that from back in the 70s, from my dad telling me that. So anyhow, when it exceeds 34% was what Zillow found specifically, that for every point of percentage above 34%, you start seeing a corresponding measurable increase in the percentage of people who are homeless. Now, we've talked about this before. There's basically 3 categories of homeless people. You've got mentally ill people. Well, this doesn't so much affect them, although there are not enough resources for mentally ill people. There are not enough facilities. You've got mentally ill people. You've got people who just, families and whatnot, who just literally can't afford a place to live. And now, increasingly, we've got immigrants who are being shipped into our big cities by red state governors. But, the bottom line here is the cost of housing. And so here's a pastor trying to just, be a decent human being, trying to follow Jesus' commands in Matthew 25. And, it ain't working. It ain't working. The city is saying, no, buddy, we're going to put you in jail for doing what your religion tells you to do. Nobody's nobody's going to jail for trashing trans people. Well, of course, religion doesn't tell you to trash trans people. But anyway, I just find the whole thing very hypocritical. What say you?